allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll have a quick intro. We'll start with Melissa. We can just go around the table and tell us who you are, what your birthday is, how many kids you have.
Melissa Fradenburg, you're not gonna get my birthday. I have two kids, one a freshman at South and an 8th grader from South.
We have our new member, Mike Vethake. So I have Michael give us your scoops.
Thank you, Ahmed. I'm Mike Vethake. I've been a resident of the district about 20 years. I'm excited to join you.
Thanks for being here, Michael.
Matthew Agnone, committee member, January 27th, 1978. three children, junior at South, a freshman at South, 6th grader at Brown.
Very good. Matt, you get the star.
Terry Collins, board treasurer. Just one left. Half another year. That's all.
Ryan Case, committee member, 4 daughters, soon to be joining Grosse Public Schools.
Who would you like to hear that?
Paul Wills, a partner with Plante at Pointe, December 25th, 1973, celebrated Big 5-0, 3 kids. Now resident of Grosse Pointe, but had the privilege of working with Grosse Pointe community since 2011, went to the district since 2017.
Okay, I'm with Ismail, and I don't remember what I asked you guys to say, so I'll move on.
Collen, Worden, I'm not board trustee. I lived in Grosse Pointe for 30 years. My other daughter is 8th grader at Parcells.
Chris Fenton, interim superintendent for 2 more days. But who's counting?
I'm Matteson, facilities director. Tomorrow's my 2-year anniversary of the district.
Thanks for being here, man.
Chris Stanley, Director of Learning Technology. Ryan, also 4 daughters here in the district, so feel you.
Okay, we're looking now if we need an approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, support.
Second.
Okay, second by Mrs. Fradenburg. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on. Information and discussion. We have with us Paul Wills today from Plante Moran. He's going to give us a walkthrough on the pupil enrollment projection study that they just completed for our school system. Mr. Wills.
Thanks, Trustee Ismail. Good evening, everybody. Up on this slide, for those that are in public or don't have a hard copy, obviously would be the documents we're going over to this evening. This is our first pass, so again, we've had a chance to meet with Mr. Fenton and a couple of board representatives just to kind of look at things holistically and really try to provide information that's useful to Grosse Pointe. A little bit of background, so Plante Low Points recognized by the Department of Treasury to provide our own projections for school districts. We have about 90 clients across the state, very large districts like Detroit Public Schools, very small schools like Clarksville, East, West, North, and South. So again, just honored to be here, and again, we've been working with the districts since 2017 on this work. First slide, first section, if you will, is going to take a look at what's happening in the Grosse Pointe district boundaries. So again, we do a lot of this work for Carhartt, we do it for AAA, we do it for Real Estate One. So we're able to do this for school districts where we actually draw the boundaries. I'll show you some of the demographics that are coming out of that. So number of houses, number of children, who's choosing private versus public. We're going to further break down between Grosse Pointe public school kids versus non-public school kids. I'm going to show you a little bit of that, really from a historical perspective over the last 12 years. And then we're going to talk about how we do our pupil enrollment projections. Then what are just some of the key takeaways for your consideration. So Chris, if you go to the next slide. So again, comprised of points plus a little woods there. Again, this is your current boundary based on your elementaries up to the middle and high school levels. So again, the information we look at in the next several pages is really what's happening inside that going forward. So next slide. So in that boundary, there's 50,894 total population. Actually, Grosse Pointe as a community is growing by about 1%. So again, a lot of people want to live in the points. The problem is that there's actually a significant amount of less birds in Wayne County. What that capture rate is for the district, and go through it a little bit. one of the things we're looking at is what are the 0 to 5? So I think you've done a phenomenal job as a district in the last several years with your Young 5s program. So what does that look like when you start hearing things from Lansing like pre-K for all 4-year-olds? So this is just a snapshot in that demographic. There's 502 5-year-olds. You can see that steady decline of 479, 40, 44 for 3-year-olds, 417, 400. And one of the reasons is that you'll see that in the live births. Grosse Pointe just cannot transition that many homes to offset that declining birth rate. We'll talk a bit about that in a second. On the right-hand side, you kind of see the splits at both the preschool level of private versus public. And again, public is Grosse Pointe proper plus any public entity. So this would be neighboring districts, schools of choice. Outside of Grosse Pointe, obviously, any charters will support it from there through 4th grade. As you can see, there's a pretty significant drop from the pre-K level to grades 1 through 12 going forward.
Would that include people that are homeschooling and sign their kid up for online classes somewhere else?
Correct. So within that boundary, there's just over 10,000. You see it's 10,069 school-aged children. Again, that's pre-K through 12th grade. And again, what you look at is say, hey, if I captured my enrollment as X, where are those kids' opportunities for potentially coming back to Grosse Pointe? That's the way I would look at it from that perspective. That's a great point. So next slide. There's really 2 parts to it. So we're going to focus on 2010, which is the 4 pie charts on the left. What we did was we went back to 2010 and took a look at the total number of students versus just like who's in the 1st through 4th grade. So we took it in 4 grade cohorts, if that makes sense. So 1st through 4th, 5th through 8th, and 9th through 12th. And so in the upper left, what you see is in 2010, there's 2,312 students at that grades 1 through 4. The other 1,075 are split between those that are in public, which again would be other entities. About 15.4% of those 1,075 and 19.4% are choosing private. So we're going to stop right there and say, is there any questions in that format? Because we're going to kind of carry it by grade level and also by a holistic.
So when you're saying in 2010, grades 1 through 4, they're in a public school, but they're not ours.
Yeah, the 1,075 of those that did not choose, so you had the 2312, so about 65% of the total population of eligible to pick those students up.
Got it.
So I think in previous presentations, it was like, oh, you're 85% capture rate. Well, that's 85% that are actually choosing Grosse Pointe, but I think the opportunity is, and you're going to see that kind of change over time, if you will, because obviously there's different things like online academies and other things that I think have greatly impacted Grosse Pointe going forward. So 2010, if you recall, obviously just coming out of the recession, no COVID, things were starting to look a little bit better from that perspective going forward. On the upper right, same left-hand section, there's 2274. This is your middle school populations, about 82% capture rate. So one of the things you'll see is some of the private schools drop off after 6th grade or 5th grade, so again, you're capturing some of those. Again, about 4% loss to non-public. And on the lower left-hand side, about 6%, or 0.6% were choosing public elsewhere, 18.7% were choosing private, and then obviously 2671 was your population at the high school level.
So that would have been like, they're choosing a private, it'd be like De La Salle,
UD, yeah.
Brother Rice.
Liggett,
Liggett.
across the street, parking lot. So, and what we find with districts like Bloomfield or Grosse Pointe, you do have higher net worth individuals that can choose private schools. To give you an example, I think Bloomfield right now is at 27% loss to private, but very nominal to, I'll call it academy or other public schools in that area.
Okay.
You're kind of more in line with, I want to say, a Rochester or Northville in terms of some of your peers. Forest Hills would be another one in the Grand Rapids area.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So can you help me understand the high 15.4% for grades 1 through 4, but then grades 5 through 8 it drops to 4%. So this is the public but non-Grosse Pointe.
Correct.
Public.
Correct.
Do we know what that is?
Yeah, so typically that would have been anything from Montessori to like K1 Montessori. Again, this is 2010.
But it's before kindergarten. This is grades 1 through 4.
Right. I have to probably go back and look again. This is just data driven off of, like, we started this in 2017. But
That'd be really, in my mind, that'd be really helpful to understand.
Okay.
Because we're, what can we do different with that 15.4%?
Sure.
Because they come back.
Actually, what you really want to focus on is on the actual right-hand side of the slide, because this is like this year's data. So I think, post-COVID,
Yeah, sure.
Michigan, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, like, I can tell you the 20%, that's, I don't know exactly who, where they're going, we actually showed a spreadsheet to the administration team from that perspective, so. On the lower left-hand, or lower right side of the left-hand side, again, this was your population, about 7,500 students in all of Grosse Pointe. Again, this is grades 1 through 12. And as you can see, this kind of lines up with that average of 1740.
So I'm sorry to be a block here. Can you go up just a little bit again? Okay, so in 2010, the non-public school first through fourth grade was 15.4%. It drops down to 4% for fifth through eighth grade.
Right.
And then now we come to 2022, it's up to 20%, but it's not dropping down.
Correct. So one of the things that we actually saw was your outward migration for online academies. So giving an idea, there are about 260 kids that go to Berkeley schools, but it's online, but they're still here in residence. Clarkston's a it's over 300 kids that are choosing online academy. So you got 500 or 600 kids that are living in Grosse Pointe but take online academies at these other districts.
And that could potentially be portions of kids, right?
Actually, they're getting a full FTE for that. So we'll give an example.
Full heads?
Do they come to South, like anywhere for any school?
So when you are online academies, so again, it's not like it's a portion of an FTE, like if you're doing online math or online foreign language. No, this is a student who's taking a full course. Brighton, Clarkston, and Berkeley are the three biggest. And then the others are Bedford.
Are those public online academies or
They're
private?
public schools, but they are a public school academy. So that was kind of kicked as schools of choice.
Is it like
online.
a charter school, or is it?
It's not a charter, it's actually authorized by.
It was like 21F, wasn't it?
It's 21F. So, not to get into legislation, but every district's supposed to offer 2 online courses, and what these districts did is said, hey, during COVID, I'm gonna offer full online classes. And so, a lot of parents chose either the private option or the online option, and they just stayed with that. So, when you say jump from 15.4, there's actually a report that we pulled from my school data that shows you roughly 1,600 kids that live here that are not in Grosse Pointe schools.
How does that work for payment? I mean, that's not even, it's obviously that's not our.
So that district will receive that funding allowance for that individual student.
Right, but I mean, who pays for it? I mean, we don't, that Berkeley is in Oakland County.
Yeah, so what happened is, so on account dates, so in October and February, they say, hey, here's my in-person account, here's my online account, and so let's say Berkeley's foundation allowance is $9,600. That'd be $9,600 for that online student. So Grosse Pointe residents aren't paying for it, it's actually through the state aid foundation account day in October and fall that's actually paying for it, it's reimbursement. So let's say Grosse Pointe says, hey, I'm opening up an academy, look at my potential capture rate, but I think you're seeing some pretty strong numbers of, if you have online programming that parents and students may want to take, that may be an option. I'm just saying that's how a lot of districts kind of looked at that. Nobody's done the same thing, they actually created an entire, they bought Walsh College. They have this whole online center now for not just Novi residents, but anyone that can drive up 275, 696, 96, or 23.
You don't have anything like that?
Wow. It's a massive, I mean, they totaled up, there's I think it was about 1,000 kids.
1,071 kids.
Yeah.
Any variance between 2020 COVID and 2022?
So actually there's a significant drop at the kindergarten first grade because parents just didn't send their kids to school. What we saw, you'll see in future slides, it actually bounced back up in terms of the number of kids enrolled in kindergarten. Your cohorts, like capture rate over year to year is actually pretty strong, and you'll see that in subsequent slides. But this is something that I think we talked about the last year's presentation, like where are these kids going? And so again, I ranked, I was going at a half hour, but if you need me, I can. So, we can send you my school data report, I think that's useful, that shows here's all the different districts, not just in totality, but also by grade. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is in 2010, you had 74-57, now you're about 56-44. We had talked about this in the 27-18 kind of blue room committee, is like, as the birth population in Wayne County goes from X to Y, it's a significant decrease. How can Grosse Pointe help adjust to some of that? Because again, people like being in the points, they don't want to move, their kids graduate, And guess what, they stay there, and there's not a lot of transition of new homes or new families in that perspective. So,
People got the taste of online and they liked it.
Yeah, correct. Shrinking numbers and losing more kids to other locations is a double.
And funding.
Well, the funding allows it, right?
I mean, you look at, let's say it seems just, from 7,500 to 1,500, it's 2,000 less kids times your foundation allowance. That's a big number, and that's $20 million, and yeah, it's over a 12-year period, but that's still $2.5–3 million cuts that the district has to look at, because funding from the state is still pre-2010. I mean, I don't know if you recall, but in 2010, the state took $470 per district per pupil across the whole state. They're still not back up to that funding source in terms of you're still.
So these schools are just running online programs.
Correct.
That's it. You
That's
can't
it.
train this.
Correct.
Okay, let's do it.
So if I'm looking at the map between the 2010 parole grade report and the 2022, so the pie is shrinking from about 10,000 down to 8,500 total. But if we had kept the same capture rate we had in 2010, that would have been another 10%. So that would be about 850 more kids.
That's correct.
I think it's more than that, because I was just doing that while we were talking. I think it's about 85 kids, 1 through 4, 480 kids, 5 through 8, 159 through 12, and 590.
4,000 kids.
It's like 1,200 kids. Again, just on a percentage basis of our capture rate in each of the 4 groups.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a lot.
No matter what, it's a significant opportunity.
Right, it's a high school.
No matter if it's 900 or 1,200.
How does that impact school choice?
So Grosse Pointe's a closed district, just like we're talking about the X.
Well, but does this change that if kids can choose online programs out of your district? I think it does, but I'm not an expert.
So let's say
If they're going out,
No, these kids are going out, but.
You're saying if we did school, if
Well,
we did online.
yeah, I think that they have to be a school of choice on the outside for kids to come into those online programs.
yeah, those schools definitely are.
Right, if you wanted to add more than the numbers that we're talking about.
Right.
that's something that's something you want to check, I think, with whatever legal entity, like you say, hey, we're a closed district, because I know Bloomfield doesn't have an online course either, just Birmingham, Troy and Rochester, but yeah, that's kind of.
You have to do it as a, possibly a section of.
I think the question is,
But that expands this even
Right.
more.
are these districts that are doing this online school, are they limited school of choice where they're only offering it online, or they're offering it online and in person?
I think most of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but like Redford, Berkeley, and Clarkston are doing, online, they can, either if you're a resident or non-resident, and they'll bring in, I think they set a quota as far as the number of kids they'll bring in online.
I think they're in person. If you're asking, are they also doing the same rule for their in-person school choice? I think it is different, right?
They-
Clarkson does not open up the entire district, they only open it up for
Very
online.
select.
That's what I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So, yeah, I think your point is, if I'm a Redford resident student, I actually go in class, I don't have the option for online. But if I'm outside and I want to go through school choice, then I can go online from that perspective.
So, yeah, and I think inside the district, I think that's a question that would be out there inside our district.
I think your point, if they're already choosing online elsewhere, but that still apply for.
Right.
Or would you record to be in the seat? Oh, that's
the question.
okay. All right, again, just to further break down the information we had before, kind of go back to 2010, we project out for 2027. One of the things you see on the far right side is basically kind of the differences between 2022 and the trended model for 2027. Again, where you're seeing kind of that K through 5, K through 4, it's almost double digits decline. Chris, if you go to the next slide, kind of take the same information. So again, there you go. So obviously 0 is usually 0, but again, 400, 417, 445, 502. So you can see that same information we had earlier of the age cohorts of 0 to 5. So again, if you're looking at that pre-K model, what's your potential capture rates there? If you're a district that was very stable, these numbers and these bars would be extremely close together. The fact is, again, not a lot of affordable housing inside Grosse Pointe. It's usually a secondary home, which you might see in middle school and high school levels, and leveling off here. Total enrollment, it's just kind of 0 to 5 trend line. So, again, as I mentioned, we're one of the demographers recognized by the Department of Treasury. We actually do a couple of things a little bit differently than, say, a Stanford middle cities. So, Chris, on the next one, we do take, again, your historical enrollment. So going back from this fall count all the way back to 2010, these are all your audited numbers. So again, every October and every February, the district has what's called count day. They do the audit, they send it to the state, the state goes, hey, congratulations, here's your foundation allowance per student. And that's how your basic, general fund is really established from there. We take a look at live births, so again, what's audited by Wayne County, Department of Human Health Services. And then again, we take a look at your demographics and geographic systems of, again, housing units, public, private, et cetera, and come up with a final project report, which we're here for this evening. So the next slide. So this is kind of a telling slide. So on the far left, what you have is 2012. There was about 23,000 births. 2013, there was 23,612. It was really the last pre-COVID. You guys were up over, Wayne County was up over 23%. What you'll see down on the lower half, it's hard to, the lens is right below that, Chris. That orange line represents your capture rate, so that you see that 1.93 in 2012. You take your enrolled kindergarten students that year, you captured roughly 1.93% of that eligible birth. So again, you kind of look at the impact of COVID, you dropped to 1.93 in 2019. It's starting to bounce back up to about 1.97. But Chris, if you go back up real quick, the other thing you're seeing is you see the impact of COVID. So Wayne County went from at the high of 23.6 in 2013 down to 21,362. So that's 2,300 kids less. Wayne County's new reality is about 21,500, 750 kids. So when you take this and extrapolate over 38 districts, Wayne County's projected is about 75,000 kids in the next 10 years. So even after the economy is coming back, birth rate continues to drop. By the way, this has happened in Oakland County, Kent County. I think when we started working in this, there was 2.1 million kids in the state in 2000. Now there's 1.45, 1.46. I know we're all doing our part. I got 3, 4. But the problem is the overall population. So next year, for the first time, the average age is like 65. There'd be more 65-year-olds than 0 to 18s. So again, this is a population shift. Michigan will still have 10 million residents going forward. So again, declining birth rate is pretty much the whole answer here. And again, not a lot of housing transitions within Grosse Pointe schools. All right, so this is the eye chart. Mike, you had a great question. So I know on this one, our actuarial notes are taken out, but I think the one cap you have is just their calculations of from comparison to what's lined out for the 2017. But the way the chart works is we're going to start in 2017, the upper left-hand side. You see the 447 students, 47.03. The way the chart works, if you go to 2018 and drop down to the first grade row, you see that grew to 461. Right below that, you see a percentage of 103.10. Everyone see that? So what that means is you grew 3%. So anything above 100% is good. Less than 100%, not good. Some people say, okay, what was our impact of COVID? Well, if you look at 2019 to 2020, every single number in the district, with the exception of 9th grade, is below 100%. So then, if you go to 23, that blue line, that's kind of the dash line, everything to the left of that is all historical data. Everything to the right of that is our 5-year projection. So we're going to start in column 2023 and kind of work our way down. So pre-COVID, you were about 103% growth, call it 3% growth. You saw the impact of COVID. It dropped to 92.5. It bounced back to 105. But the last 2 years, we've seen like a 2 to 4% drop at kindergarten to first grade. We don't know why. We don't know how. We talked, I think, previously about doing exit interviews from that perspective. but you're still bringing in more kindergarten, so you're at the 450, 460, 455 level, going forward. Second grade, almost 100%. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth was well over 100%. So again, very strong survival. So again, people are choosing the points, it's just not double digits. 10th grade, you do start having a dip. 11th grade, those are your students that are not on your traditional 4-year path, or like I said, they're choosing some other alternative from the high school level.
Well, does Plante Moran have templated exit interviews?
Actually, we do not. I do know several districts that do that. I could share them with you.
That would be great, thank you.
Bloomfield has implemented that after they built the high school, just to figure out what the solution is, going from 2 down to 1 and just reconfiguration.
Thank you.
So again, everything to the left of that is historical data. So in 2012, your total foundation, total enrollment was 7,830. This past year at 6,431. And based on our projections and the models that we've created, it'll be just over 6,000 kids in 2028.
The key one is we're gonna be down about 135 on the general. It's not blended, but,
That's correct.
so that's 1.4 million, 1.3 million.
So one of the reasons you see is you look at your 461 and the incoming. A couple of years ago, you graduated your last class of over 700 students. 2 years ago, you had your last class of over 600 students. Now you're in that 550, 560 range for a graduating class.
For both high schools.
For both high schools. And so at the end of the day, what's happening is it's just that decline of birth rate. And so you get some very large 2012 through 2020 graduating classes, and now you're kind of seeing that bubble work its way through the system. I think we actually talked about this in 2017. I think we're within 1% of accuracy from that perspective. So on the next slide, Chris, if you
Got
could.
a question on that.
Oh, yeah, question.
The SE that you have as special ed, is that including kids we bring in as a host district, or are those just ours?
This is FTE, that's a great point. So this is foundational or full-time equivalency, not headcount.
Right.
I think in 2017, we both did a foundational or full-time equivalency and headcount because you're looking at utilization. Right. So that's something we talked about. If you want to update that, you can work with that and the team and administration. So. This takes the same information, again, blue line about 2/3 of the way through everything. The left is your historical data. Again, K4, 5/8, 9/12. This gives you different options. So, hey, this rule is want to think of a K2, 3/8, something about it. It provides information for everybody. The next slide, Chris.
So bottom line, by 2028, K through 12, we're talking about 5,600 kids total.
So the thing that kind of popped out at me when I first saw this was in looking at the, I think you alluded to it on an earlier slide, when you go from 8th to 9th grade and you get the influx from, we don't have a Catholic high school around, and so some of them are Catholic 8th grade. But that used to be a pickup of like 60, 80, 100 kids. And then more recently, it's that shrink. So especially in the COVID years, but more recently, you're talking more like 35, 40 kids. So do we know why that is? I mean, is there a reason why we're not getting that influx of the Catholic school kids?
That goes back to the online academy model. So, and like I said, I'll send you the my school data. It's your data. We just have to cycle through it, but it tells you exactly every grade, what district, and quantity. So you can see a pretty large chunk from 8th to 9th to these high school online academies. So instead of the 65, 75, you've got 20, 30 kids that are choosing somewhere else.
Does that also break down which private school we're going to?
Let's do the private, but it does tell you, because private schools don't have to report where the kids are coming from. We know the quantity, we just don't know where and how.
Okay.
But for the public schools, it's obviously through my school data. So I'm Clarkston and I do a October count, fall count. It's all there. So, this really takes the overall demographic report. I think tells the story of the K4, which is your green or turquoise squares. We saw the dip there down to 2021, 27, and 2020. That was the impact of COVID. Again, it's bounced right back up, to roughly 2,300 kids. You're going to slowly see that decline to about 2,100 kids. So some of this is you look at your elementaries, capacities, and classrooms and special ed. It's the whole facility plan, but we're about 2,100 to 2,300 kids for the next 5 years. Middle school is your 5'8", blue ball on the lower. So again, at 2017, you had 2274, about 1,729. Again, we do see that slightly upticking again because, again, Grosse Pointe is a desirable district. We are seeing secondary, upper elementary, secondary movement into the district. So we have about 1,700 kids at that level. And ultimately at the high school, 2017, you had 2,800 kids. This year, you had just over 2,000. We're going to slowly see that start to plan out about 1,800 kids in the next 5 years. So key takeaways on the last page. As I mentioned, Wayne County itself is down 1,600 kids over the last 5 years. We work with SEMCOG, Wayne State University, U of M, Michigan State, and they're still projecting about a 10% decrease across Southeast Michigan. The good news is you are consistently capturing 2%. Like we see some districts that dips to 1.25 or 1.5. We don't see any huge variances there, which is great. As I mentioned, you graduated 730 kids in 2017, graduated 561. The elementary and middle schools are finally leveling off from a plan perspective, but again, that high school enrollment will continue to decline through 2027. So with that, I'll turn back over to Trustee Ismail and the board and finance
Any
committee.
other questions for Paul? So Chris, go back in time, how many kids did we have when we were at Grosse Pointe South? I think we had 3,500,
3,300, something like that. Yeah.
3,300.
That was just 3
Just in
grades.
South.
What happened between 16 and 17 at the 17 percentages?
Yeah, so actually, you'll see in the actual slide here, so that was our team's like calculations doing back checking. So you're gonna see like numbers like 174%, 34%, 94%.
Is there a second page you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's slide 14. Right, one more. There you go. So, see how 2017 there's no percent, that's the way it should be. We printed these out and sent these, I think, over the weekend. I think Mike did a great job. He's like, hey, Paul, quick question. I'm like, that's our actuary's notes. I'm like, oh, great. All the calculations are shown up. But no, so when you jump over to 2018, those are the actual cohort numbers again audited. And then that blue line kind of everything for 5 years next are projections.
The key takeaways is the increased loss of students to these online schools that we're experiencing. I mean, to me, that jumps off the page.
Yeah, what are your recommendations? Where are you gonna come up with a couple thousand kids for us?
That's administrative and board option and director. So if I was a resident, I might have different ideas, but no. Again, we can share like maybe what other districts are thinking, talking, discussing. Obviously, I think Grosse Pointe residents prefer a closed district, right? So again, it's similar to Bloomfield, Birmingham, Northville, Forest Hill, and some others. But what are those online options that you can capture some foundational amounts? So you already do some of that with the private schools, like maybe you have some share time, FT equivalencies, but it's not a full-time student. So again, I'd work with your board policies and look at potentially online, because I think that's where, again, the state and the country figured out during COVID, like, here you could have 100% of the time, but parents don't want 100% of the time. They want some form and option. So I think what we see is majority are in person, but they do have an online option for those.
And Paul, I apologize, you might have that in there. Most of the students that, if we're gonna use the term online, are they generally, is that secondary that's happening? It's not elementary, correct?
Both of them.
Sure. I guess I would assume it would be more secondary.
So are parents that are homeschooling, are they using this online option to supplement the homeschooling?
There's some of that. I think some of it is, we actually work with a district on the west side. We actually sent out surveys to the entire community.
Mhm.
So they sent out, I don't know, I think 10 or 12,000 surveys. They got back 6,500. From people that don't have kids in the district, And at the end of the day, it was like overwhelming response. They gave clear direction for the next 10 years of what they wanted to see academically.
Okay.
Both at the elementary, pre-K levels, all the way up through 12th grade.
Which district was that?
This Grosse Pointe Grand Rapids schools.
Grand Rapids schools?
And they actually lose 34% of the charters. So again, Or are some programs that the charters offer that they can, but maybe the charters stop at grade 8, not on charter high schools in that perspective. Same thing with online, so they lose, so Kent County is 100% school choice.
Mm.
So it's like the Wild West, like kids are leaving here. Go from there. So. All right, so you, Chris, you had a question on which grade? So online. Let's do high school.
It's a big jump from high school.
Was that in there, Matt?
I think so. I think one of those first charts, the first graph where they had the 4.
I think that was 5 to 8. 5 to 8 grew from 4% to 19.
Got it.
High school did grow too, from almost 0 to 6.6.
So to give you an idea, like Clarkson has 260 of your students, Berkeley 350.
And can you just make, that's online, or that just means they're attending that district? We don't know if it's online or not online.
I'm pretty sure in Clarkston it's going to be online. It's a long haul.
Well, I know, but I just want to, does the data say that? Or we
Yeah,
making an
I'll
assumption?
give you an example. There's 38 kids that choose Detroit Public School Community District. I would assume either they're a parent that works in the district, they take their kid to school. When you start seeing numbers like 350, 260, like I'd say the majority of those would be online.
Okay.
Redford Union 245. Let's see. So kindergarten, as crazy as it sounds, there's 105 choosing other districts. At grades 1 through 4, 457. 382 at the middle school level, and then high school about 364. So
That's our graduating class at one of the high schools.
Paul, what's the deal with pre-K young fives? Is
So
it
that's a
CAD?
program-
Is it CAD?
yeah, so that's a great question. So the district created that in 2018, Chris? 2018, 19? Young fives?
Yes.
So it's basically, it is throttled, so it stops at roughly 9,500 students, but again, you look at it, say, 200 students. Part of it is like, you don't get the, actually you do get the full foundation for young fives, so that'd be another suggestion.
It's a big feeder.
It's a huge fee, right?
Well, we have them now at 5 to 7 schools, it's grown.
That's a great point.
It says here on Berkeley that they offer online learning opportunities through the Michigan Virtual University.
Correct.
Right.
So it's a Michigan high school diploma.
And you're not inventing it, it's already invented. You know, just putting your name on it. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Wills? I'm sure we'll have a lot after you sleep on this for and if you do, just funnel them to me, I'll get them to Paul, and we'll get answers to everybody.
I'll try to get you a couple sample exit interviews.
That would be
from
great.
different districts, and then we're presenting this at the February 6th
Board meeting. And then the other thing I'd like, if you can get it for us, Paul, is a sample of, or a link to that survey that you did for Grand Rapids. That would be a great eye opener, I think, for all of us.
And then just out of my own curiosity, Paul, you mentioned Novi having an online academy. I feel like I remember that coming up in 21. Like, I know that they started it, like many of our school districts, ourselves included, in 2020. We did have a virtual component to it. And then I know in 2021,
A lot of
they're
districts just
continuing
continue
that.
on right after.
And they're still continuing it to this day.
Actually, they have a huge Asian contingent, about 22% of their students, so they have a lot from around Michigan. So Birmingham used to host the Japanese high school.
Yep.
Right.
Then moved out to Novi, and now they said, hey, why don't we just have an online Japanese high school?
Wow.
That was their solution. So they bought a building from Walsh College, that's their Brook in '96, and that's where they have the virtual academy.
Yeah, I thought that they were just going to continue it for a year.
I think you're seeing more conversations like this, like, hey, we figured out during COVID, is there an opportunity to capture 10, 15, catch it back to the,
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
Thanks for
Paul, thank you for being here. You're welcome to hang with us for the rest of the meeting. Or
Are you going through B-rate fibering and some other
Yeah, it's all
code
my
updates?
stuff.
So, Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, appreciate your time. Okay, next we're gonna move into technology device refresh update.
Yeah,
Dr. Stanley.
That's neat. And
So now we saw all the money that we could be taking in for student for losing, you're gonna tell us how to spend more.
Yeah, you nailed it, Ahmed. You did, and I'm also going to apologize too. I mean, you just had the great work of Plante Moran with their numbers crunched, and now you get the English major turned technology director to share with you guys some of the numbers that I've crunched out there too. What I'd like to do today is, I know not everybody was here back in December, but the majority of you were. On December 4th, I presented to the Finance and Facility Committee just kind of some forward planning as to what we need to be doing when it comes to technology device refreshes out there. So I'm gonna go back a little bit of my presentation from December, so I apologize if I'm gonna bore you. But I also have some new information that I'm gonna be sharing with you guys too as we go along with it. So the purpose of this presentation, really more than anything, is to help place our school district on a reasonable technology device refresh cycle, and to possibly share and create a pathway from going from bring your own device to one-to-one. And so that's kind of my addition to this presentation today, as opposed to what we did last time too.
I want to educate everybody one-to-one what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, our school district is bring your own device for grades 5th through 12th grade. And so we do ask families to purchase their own devices for their students to be able to use inside classrooms every single day. We do have some devices available for families that there is a financial need to that. And so we are able to assist some families with those. However, I will tell you, we are one of the only districts out there that is currently going, that is bring your own device. We have been doing that since 2019. It's been working for us, but so I think that there's some pros to that and there's certainly some cons too. So we'll kind of talk about that going forward. A couple of things that I just want to share with you. I came into this role in 2017 as the technology director. And some of the things that we just did notice is I'm walking into classrooms with old smart boards that were probably 13 years old, 7 years, far too long in the classroom. I remember students saying that when their teachers were presenting, we had the projectors that were on there. My daughter, who was in 2nd grade at the time, she would basically say that she would turn to the teacher's computer desktop to actually stare at that monitor as opposed to the screen as a whole. Glenn, you understand, right? I mean, because the lights were so dim. And really what we want to do right now is to not be in those situations again. To not have to feel like we have to buy everything at once. And what can we start to do to be able to get into an honest refresh cycle that's going to make the most sense for us as a community? So while we're doing that, I do want to share some assumptions with you. Some of the assumptions that I shared last time, and to provide an update on what these 3 years could look like. And what I'm just going to be talking about right now, and I will have information for you at a later date, I'm just talking about technology devices right now. I'm not talking interactive flat panels. I'm not talking about redoing our network or adding more access points or cameras, updating those, all those things that occurred during the bond. I'm just talking about the devices that our staff uses and our students use.
Just for those who don't follow this or don't have kids in the system,
Sure.
What is the device they're using? You have one device that they use K through 12. You have different devices for high school.
Yeah, so we consider ourselves a Chromebook district, right? And what we like about Chromebooks is I like to call them internet machines. They're basically all connecting to the cloud. There isn't a need for strong storage, and because we're a Google district, basically all of this information follows the students wherever they go, no matter what device they're going to be using. So they don't need to store things onto a computer. What's also nice about a Chromebook that has made it affordable for school districts is it's not the price of a MacBook, right? I mean, we're looking at about the prices of $350 to $400 as opposed to $1,500 for a MacBook going forward. So a couple of the assumptions. Good job, Chris.
I think it's one of the questions I want to make, but students can bring any device.
Currently, right now, because
Right
yes.
now, right. So you have, you support that? That's a question I have, and maybe you'll get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the devices that we purchase for student use, right? So whether that's at the elementary school level or for testing purposes, are Chromebooks. But because we are bring your own device, we recommend the use of Chromebooks because of the affordability, but certainly some students do bring in other types of devices. They might be bringing in a Windows laptop or a MacBook, anything like those. So the counts that I'm going to share with you, this is really just for budgeting purposes that's out there, okay? The counts that I'm sharing with you are based off of some previous staff counts, so I would say last year's staff counts going forward, but at least it lands us in a spot. The laptops that we're using right now for our staff members, our plan is to continue utilizing throughout the district. And what I mean by that is, previous to 2020, we were all desktops before with staff members. We're now fully mobile, and that's going to continue to be our plan going forward. Another thing to share with you guys is laptop and Chromebook prices have certainly increased since 2020. That generally isn't always the case. A lot of times with technology, we do see prices coming down, but that just really hasn't happened in this market right now, especially when it comes to Chromebooks. There was some pricing out there. I think when we first started purchasing them, they were about $225 to $250. I'm pricing them right now at about $400 as we're taking a look at these. We've also seen an increased use of technology uses at the elementary level. So when I'm sharing some of these costs with you, I'm basically basing them off of a one device per 1.5 students. That's kind of the numbers that I'm crunching over there, in case you guys do have some questions along those lines. Because we're starting to see that it's just being used more with a lot of those digital tools. And then I've also added a 10% contingency in there to the total cost. I didn't add any escalation of cost over the years, so I'm just kind of going along with that 10% price, but I've put those in a different category. So last time what I presented was a couple of different options. I said, you know, we could go this path of 3 years, so we could start our device refresh right now, or we could go along the lines of a 5-year refresh cycle. After having these conversations, Ahmed actually asked, he said, Chris, which is the one that you recommend? And I certainly believe that where we're at right now, a 3-year refresh cycle is going to be the best for us, and I'll tell you why. We had to purchase all devices for staff at once in 2020. That wasn't originally going to be the plan. With the bond that went through, we were going to be purchasing devices for staff members as we continue to upgrade every single building. But guess what? COVID happens. And we realized that there was a stronger need to have that mobility in place. Because we had bond dollars already, we thought that it made the most sense at that point, that summer of 2020, to just go ahead and purchase those devices in advance. So it was great to be able to do that. It was great that we had the money, but the clock starts ticking right away. So all of our staff members currently have devices from 2020. So because of that, I think it makes the most sense to go along the lines of a 3-year refresh cycle moving forward. So I decided to put this number out there out loud before we dive into any of these things because it's a big ticket, right? It's just one of those things. It was great with the bond that we were able to purchase all of these items, but technology has to continue. These things get old real quick. And what is it that we're going to be doing to purchase? So this isn't just over 1 year, it would be over the price, or over the course of 3 years moving forward. This is the price if we were not to go one-to-one to students, okay? So I'm kind of compartmentalizing this conversation. If we were not to go one-to-one with students, meaning us purchasing devices for students grades 5 through 12, this still would be our cost. Because of state testing, we still need to purchase Chromebook devices. We do. They need to be school-managed devices that are out there. And so we've had to do that previously. And so perfect example, at our secondary buildings, because of MSTEP testing, because of the PSAT, because the AP tests are going online, although we're bring your own device, we still needed devices for students when it came to testing out there.
Let's explain that a little bit as far as, so as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, those tests must be done on a school-managed computer?
Correct.
So they can't be done on the student's own computer. They have to be done, we have to have a device for that student when that test is being taken.
Correct, and I want to clarify that one a little bit. Because we recommend Chromebooks, and we do think that those are the best way to go, you can't use a personally owned Chromebook device. You could use a MacBook if you wanted to. You could use a Windows laptop. But that creates some further complications too going forward. If it's a school-managed device, we're able to just push it out through the Chromebook. We're able to lock down things, and we're able to manage it in a uniform manner that I think is going to be an easier workflow for both the students and for our staff members too.
Thank you.
I'm also happy to pause right now too and answer any questions that you might have just based off of what I'm sharing right now.
So would this be, this 4.7, would this be incremental cost? Because you said they were purchased in 2020, so does that mean the cost for this category of expense would have been 0 in 21, 22, and 23?
That's correct.
So about 1.6 million incremental cost each year. And then, would it be fair to say that we're gonna have to refresh in 27, 28?
That's correct.
So this is gonna be an ongoing cost.
Correct.
Roughly
The
1%.
subscription.
Yes.
Yes. So I think what we could do though is discuss some options going forward. Like, do we always have to be a 3-year refresh cycle? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I would argue that it would be wise for us to go with a 3-year refresh cycle now, but then in the future, let's say 27-28 school year, do we rethink that and go, okay, maybe we could go 5, maybe we could stretch that out a little bit more.
So what do you make that on the basis of technology plateauing?
I think, yeah, that's, I mean, I will certainly say Garrett Kelly, who is our senior network supervisor, he builds a heck of a computer. He truly does. And so we're not just purchasing devices that is like, oh, Dell just has this one on the shelf, right? We want to be able to purchase a commercial device that we can build that we know is going to be sustainable for our staff throughout time. So right now, I will certainly say we're in year 4 of these devices going forward, and knock on wood, we haven't had major overall issues so far. I mean, they're still running pretty nice.
And the teachers aren't using Chromebooks, right? They have a different laptop.
Correct. Teachers are using Dell laptops. Students are utilizing Chromebooks.
Thank you.
Yes. Right.
Are there any companies out there right now that lease these Chromebooks out?
That's great that you asked that. Actually, we have some meetings going forward with Dell, seeing what some options could be. And Brandy, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay. Were we setting up a meeting on some possible leasing opportunities?
We're gonna start looking into that, yes.
Okay.
Because it's every 3 years, and that might make more sense.
Yep. Absolutely agree with that.
What's the, I'll call it usage, but the devices that the district has to purchase for testing, how often are those used? Like, I mean, are they sitting there a lot other than on test day, and that's when they're being used?
So it's going to depend by building, I would certainly say. There are some buildings that have found different ways to utilize it more than some others that are out there, but I would say for the most part, like I'll share Parcells for example. We have an allotment of Chromebook carts that are specifically used for testing, but they still find different ways to be able to use them throughout the school day. But here's the tough part. When you bring your own device though, you still want to be able to encourage bring your own device. If you're saying, hey, yeah, we've got devices for you to be able to use, especially at the middle school level, you might have kids go, oh, I'm just not gonna bring my device today, I'm just gonna take this one.
And that was kind of my point around usage, like how are they being used outside of the testing, which is why we're required to have them.
We're pretty much making the statement right now, like these are specifically made for testing, but we can certainly understand that there are times that a building might go, hey, we've got these, so might as well use them.
What are the logistics involved in tracking those? Like, you dole them out piecemeal, how are you handling all of that?
Chromebooks are actually pretty helpful that way. We've got a couple of different tools that we use. One is called Gopher Buddy, that, you know, if a device is lost, unfortunately, it's not like an iPhone that I can just ping it, but I can at least do enough detective work to see exactly where it was used last and who used it last based off of that. We also have a really good inventory system that, you know, almost like a library. You're able to check it out to a student, bring it back.
Barcoded?
Yep.
Good, thank you.
I have more to share, so is it okay if I move on with that part? Okay, thank you. This I will also say, this option, basically my goal here was to try to even this out as much as possible. So because I have south like on 24, 25, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be south. I think that those are different conversations that we can have throughout. I just really wanted to see how evenly I could distribute those last 3 years.
Is there a reason, Chris, you picked South? Do they have older devices or?
No, actually, I mean, South was one of our first buildings that went through bond construction. That was in 2020. But again, I mean, the staff laptops are the same age as the staff laptops over at Bouchard, too. All right, so now I want to talk about, so that was the information that I shared last time. Now I think it's important for us to talk about, is there a possibility for a pathway to go one-to-one? And again, when I mean one-to-one is, can we move away from bring your own device, go to one-to-one where the district is providing devices to students that are out there? So I just have a couple of bullet points that I want to talk about. I might have shared them already, but I'll just be happy to reiterate. A plan that makes sense. There are more required state standardized tests that are going digital. I'll give you a perfect example. Just this past fall, the PSAT has now gone completely digital out there. So we were able to do it. We were. And it was great. We were successful at it. But it was a big cart shuffle because Grosse Pointe South didn't have as many carts as they needed in order to be able to accomplish this, that all 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students could do it. Generally, in the past, we had North and South take it on the same day because it's simple enough, right? You're just doing it paper and pencil. We had to rethink and go, okay, what are we going to do? So we had to stagger it. And so basically what that meant was a lot of staff moving a lot of carts to different buildings back and forth. Middle schools had to do PSAT 8 on a different day too. And that was just because just last year it was announced, right? So we've already purchased these devices in 2020, 2021. But then all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's more testing that's needed that's out there. I'll also add that there truly is a need for school management. I'll give you a perfect example. We're piloting a program right now, it's called a Respondus Lockdown Browser. It's a software program so that when students are taking a digital test online, not a state test, but the teacher has decided to create this, we have the ability to lock everything down so that they're not hitting a tab or going to ChatGPT and checking out the answers, right? The only way I can do that right now on a bring your own device is by saying to every single student over here, hey, we have this program. I'd encourage you to download it. Right? In case, I can't force you to download it. It's your device, right? If it's a school-owned device, I can say no problem, boom. It's our devices, we're able to do that. So I think that there's good arguments for students to download it. I think it's a great tool, especially if I'm an AP student, knowing that 9 AP tests are going digital next year. I'm going to be downloading that right now so that I'm going to get that full experience. But still at the same time, I can't make it mandatory, right? So that's one small example why I do truly believe that a school-managed device is going to be more helpful. As I stated before, I do think that uniform devices make for a better workflow process for both staff and students. And also, I guess I'll just finally say, I don't know if bring your own device, asking the community to purchase devices while I still need to purchase devices at the Chromebook level because of testing, makes the most sense for every single community member out here. So I'm telling Terry, hey, you gotta have a device, but I'm still purchasing devices out there because of state testing going forward. So I really believe that we could utilize the most of our funds by saying, we're purchasing the devices. We got you covered, you're gonna use it every single day and during testing. That's where it's gonna be covered right there too.
Can you make that mandatory?
Yeah, that's where it would need to be. So what does that number look like? So I had 4.7 before. If we were to go in a 3-year plan, if we were to go one-to-one, we'd be looking at about $5.3 million. So that's about a $581,000 difference. So it's larger. And again, we're talking the budget cuts, I certainly understand that. But what are some ways that we might be able to best utilize the resources that we have available to us? So I have a good example for you. Here is the best option that I have out here, but I think that there's some good questions that go along with this. So 3-year option with Chromebooks. What I did was at our secondary buildings, you'll see on the spreadsheet, I removed the Chromebook purchases, that's why the number came down south, right? So it's now only $845,000. I removed those prices, but basically I added, what would this look like if we were to take a look at our numbers and go, hey, we are going to be purchasing devices for 5th grade students and 9th grade students going forward. Why those grades? Because that makes the most sense for a refresh cycle, right? You get it in 5th grade, you get a brand new device. By 9th grade, at the end of 8th grade, you turn that in 9th grade, you get another device too.
What do you do with those computers that are turned in, Chris?
So we'd still get some use out of them. I think what we could do, it would make the most sense that we could move those down to the elementary level and they can be used that way. So looking to save some money there.
So we're $1.7 million every year in perpetuity.
Correct. Correct. Here's what I've done right now too. So if you guys take a look at the spreadsheet, I think it's gonna, I'm sorry, you might not have it right there. Okay, just the single-handed spreadsheet out there. Again, former English major. I like the numbers though. I felt really good about the numbers that we were crunching over here. But I want to be able to at least explain these 3 different charts to you. So a 3-year plan without one-to-one, that's the one on the far left, shared that with you, that's basically what that cost would be looking like. A 3-year plan with one-to-one over 3 years is over on the far right-hand corner. And that's what I've shared with you as well. But then I just threw out there, what would it look like overall if we went, okay, there's a pathway to one-to-one, but what if we just did it that whole first year? Right? It's a bigger number. We'd be looking at about $6.6 million. And that very first year, I'd be looking to spend about $3 million total. Because I want to show you what this plan could look like. Well, actually, it probably makes sense for me to pause real quick. What questions do you have just taking a look at those? What are you thinking about?
Have you thought about, like right now, I mean, with the one-to-one, I'm assuming these kids are bringing these devices home.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big, I don't know, what happens when they get damaged or, because I have an 8th grade boy that I have the device, I'm the purchaser of it, and I'm pretty scary about keeping track of things.
Sure.
I don't know what all parents are, but he's terrified of it breaking and it's already broken, like the mouse doesn't work.
Sure.
And so he's rough on it.
Mm-hmm.
He comes home and, you know, he's got a soda next to him, like, these
He's
are
a
things
normal
like,
kid.
Valid
are
question.
these numbers including that, like replacing it, or if you get a device and then you ruin it, then you have to buy your own, or what?
So here's what I've included so far. The only thing on top of that I've included is cases. Okay, so cases for
Cases
students.
are not cool, they're almost as not
Correct.
cool as jackets in the winter.
Correct.
I just wanna put it out there, my kids
Correct.
were like not having it.
You're getting a case if you're getting a one-to-one device.
Okay.
We are including that case on there. Another thing that I've seen other districts do that I found to be pretty interesting is they've done a $25 self-insured policy that would be required along those ways. So what that means is, rather than having to buy your own device out there, it's $25 per student that's using that. And that
per year?
That would be per year, correct. And so then that would go into the pool. When that happens, if an accidental thing were to occur, we're talking accidental over here, and I've seen some other districts have some really great language as to what they're defining as accidental versus you were
Soda
just really
spills
upset.
on it.
Exactly. We're able to take that from you because you spent the $25 and we're able to replace that. Obviously, if it's happening several times, I think that there's different conversations to be had. But I do think that this is an appropriate way to be able to manage that because you at least would still have an account number so that if there is a damage rate coming back, we're able to purchase a new device. I'd also say that the break rate isn't as big as I would have thought at first. I can't say the percentage, but it's been much lower than I previously thought.
Melissa, you have his cell number?
Yeah.
Happy to get it.
We might need to pay 50 and the insurance policy,
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
Do we have visibility into like what other school districts currently have one-to-one or about to go to one-to-one? Like especially the ones that are among our, peer districts.
I'm happy to share that, yeah. You know, if I'm thinking of our peer districts that are out there, I know Troy Schools is 1-to-1. Northville is not, they are bring your own device. I believe Novi is. But I'm happy to get that.
Unless Bloomfield Hills or Birmingham, you know, off the top of your
I
head.
don't know, I'm sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
That would be good information. to
Sure,
have.
absolutely.
Of the ones that have it, do you know how much if they charge any sort of extra fee over and above maybe a $25 fee?
That's something that I'll look into a little bit further. Yeah, because I mean, I thought that $25 sounded at least like a reasonable fee out there, but if we feel that it needs to be a little bit larger, I think that could work too.
Like an annual technology fee or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Are there companies that would, so we don't end up being the self-insurer? Are there companies out there that you can actually just,
There absolutely are.
and it goes back to your leasing item, maybe the thing to do is you look at a lease and that includes replacement of any damaged machines.
Yeah, there certainly are companies that do have insurance policies that go along that way. Yeah. I guess I just continue to see this happening more and more, that the state itself is going, hey, this test is going online, and right now we're playing the Chromebook shuffle out there. It's going, okay, well, if I'm taking a look at a refresh cycle, I wonder what it would look like to go 1-to-1. Because to me personally, it makes more sense. But we also did see that it was an added cost per year, taking a look at that.
That's 2% of our budget.
So, to me, I feel like this is the most reasonable path, and I want to share this with you. So if we were to go 1-to-1, again, I'm really just looking at what is it that we could be doing or what grade levels do we need to purchase new devices for? I think it really needs to be 5th grade and 9th grade. But if we were to go 1-to-1 next year, that still means that we still currently have a slew of devices at our secondary buildings that I would be able to backfill for 6th grade and 10th grade students out there. Still would give me enough to be able to complete testing for 8th graders and 11th graders that are out there, but at least it's still a good number to go, okay, because if I didn't include this, this would be a 4-year plan. So I'm just looking to speed this up a little bit more going forward. But I will certainly tell you, I know that a lot of questions could come along with this. For example, my kid is going into 8th grade next year. Chris Stanley's kid is going into 8th grade next year. She's had a device since 5th grade that we purchased for her. Say that breaks by 8th grade. Now as the parent, knowing this plan, am I going to go, man, really, I gotta buy her a Chromebook for 1 year, knowing that I'm gonna be able to get a new one in 9th grade? I know that that's a conversation to be had. I certainly do, and I think that's a conversation that we would have to have with the community should we decide to go this route. That's not everyone, but I know that that's certainly a case, right? I think though that this, if we were to choose to go 1-to-1, this is probably our healthiest pathway to.
So the plan that you had to go 1-to-1 in 1 year, the 6.6 number, the catcher is the first year. After that, we're at $1.7 million about where you're gonna be on the other plans.
That's correct. So it's that first year that's big. Yep, that first year that's big. Now, one of the things that we did learn is language and sinking fund changed in 2017. And we did reach out to our attorney based off of that. And we can purchase technology devices as long as they're used for the sake of learning with sinking fund dollars out there.
Yeah, block TikTok there.
To block it, yep. That's right.
No worries there.
So Ben Matteson and I get to arm wrestle over a couple of those different things out there.
Asphalt for the parking lot.
Correct.
Versus new toy.
Correct, that's right. So at least it's nice to know that, you know, we would have the ability to go into sinking fund if this were something that we would choose to do.
But we clearly, if we go that route, you can't do it on 1 mil.
No
1
way.
mil brings in 3.3 million, and you've got a lot of construction related stuff. You could do some of that maybe, but you clearly need to bump that up to some point.
Yeah, plus
That's my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right, Chris, and plus the other issue is, along with this goes the fact that our books and textbooks are not textbooks anymore. They're all subscription
Correct.
online. So that's a new, we used to have a twist where every 5 years we would buy new math books. Those days are gone. Now it's every year, there's a hunk going out. What is that number? You don't remember what Keith said?
I feel like it was
I thought it was $1.5 million.
about $1 million something, yeah.
Yeah, every year now.
It's all subscription based. The game has changed completely. There was a time that we'd be able to use Adobe, right? So
Right.
Adobe Photoshop, we'd buy it and we could stretch it out, it's 7-8 years as long as they were still going on our computers. That's not the case anymore. It's every single year I'm paying about $12,000 just to go that route.
So budget-wise, we're looking at Chromebooks plus curriculum equals $3 million a year, 3%.
Yeah, I in having conversations, I'd almost use the language that technology tools are curriculum now. I mean, that's how they're using this. So next steps, and I do appreciate your time, I'll probably take, go ahead.
Just a real quick question.
Yeah.
And I might stop you from thinking clearly here. So, are you proposing the 1-to-1 over 3 years?
Correct.
Okay, so we don't need to talk about, I had a question on the map then.
I mean, unless you got really excited about that, let's
No.
buy them all for
That's fine.
students.
If we're not, if that's not the, if you're not gonna recommend that, we don't need to waste time.
I love that idea.
I wasn't, yeah, so I'm not following, but it's fine then.
Okay, all right. I'm still happy to know the math later, because
Okay.
I might have been off.
I can talk to you after.
So, okay, cool. Next steps, what I'd be looking to do is receive the proper quotes for more detailed pricing that's out there. As again, right now I'm budgeting, educated budgeting off of, what we've purchased in the past, also just working with some of our other tech companies out there. I think it's also gonna be important to work with the business department and facilities, talking about what's gonna be most important with some of these sinking fund projects that are out there. Eventually, I am gonna have to go to the board either way, whether we are looking at the 1-to-1 route or, say we're not gonna do that, there's still some devices that I'm gonna have to be purchasing, so the clock will be ticking either way. And then should we go the 1-to-1 route, then what we need to do is plan and prepare to speak with all of our stakeholders about some of those new changes.
And what's tricky in the 24-25 budget, you're still on the sinking fund, just dealing with the 1 mil.
Right.
Let's say we get up to 2 mil, that's not gonna happen until 25-26.
Correct.
So let's assume you're gonna go the Band-Aid method and just buy what you have to buy, juggle where you have to juggle. When do you need to bring that to the board so that you have those Band-Aids in place for when you need them?
So just for clarity, you're saying like, if we weren't ready to have the conversation about 1-to-1 or anything like that,
Right.
with some Band-Aid things that you could do, I would say I would feel most comfortable in March/April to do it. I wouldn't wanna do it any later than that.
Okay, so this is a decision's gotta happen like now. We've got one more meeting here before that
I'd
happens.
say it's more like April.
More like April.
Okay,
But a plan 2024-2025 would be a 2024-2025 budget item, be a budget line item, right?
Correct.
So you define that number, we need to define that number in the budget as an ongoing $1.7 million expense.
Absolutely, and so I think that's why it's a good conversation to have with Ben and Brandy out there, how much of that sinking fund that we currently have right now might I be able to use going forward with this?
I think that you have right now, not much. I mean, based on what Ben's got on the docket, from a reality standpoint. Now, what are the options as far as buying it? Let's see, because where your fiscal years fall, if you bought it with borrowed funds and then when you renewed your sinking fund at a higher rate, paying that back, can you do that?
Brandy.
I don't know if that's a Brandy or Chris question.
Well, you can go back, I'd have to check with legal, you can go back under bond issues and sinking funds. I never forget what there's a time limit.
Yeah.
But
What were we gonna say?
It should be the same fiscal year as with it, how it's flowing through.
Thank you.
the new sinking fund would take effect
Correct.
till November 2025. Yes.
I have a question.
No, but you can pay for
In
those
that year,
items,
yes.
yeah, right.
In that year.
For the, not the one-to-one, but the refresh, say, like, all the teachers got laptops in 2020.
Sure.
I work for a company with 11 employees. I have the same laptop that I got, and I use it all day, every day in 19. The deal is if it breaks, like employees have had, things go haywire, they get a new computer. Like, why are we gonna take perfectly good computers that were purchased in 2020 and be like, you get a new computer, you get a new computer? Like, is there an option separate from the one-to-one where teachers, we buy some new ones and replace as we go, like as things break
As
down?
needed.
Yeah, like, or at least recycle, like what happens to, again, I have the same laptop and I use it all day, every day, so that I would imagine there's some teachers who use it more for, that they just got unlucky and got a bad one, maybe that's slow and whatever, but is there the need, and I don't understand the technology, so maybe there is
Sure.
the need that everybody needs this updated whatever. Is that an option to save money, like to go to the one-to-one, to spend the money to buy the devices? Maybe we could do it all at once if we didn't just do, okay, everybody at South gets a new computer this year.
That's one way of looking at it, honestly. I guess how we were just kind of going from it is building by building on our plan, but I certainly don't think that that's wrong, what you're saying.
Okay, I was just throwing it out there.
That's a valid point, something we need to see the numbers on.
What's the shelf life? I mean, like, I work for the Macomb County, and like, after a while, don't they just become obsolete?
Yeah, they start to fade. I mean, I think also with a lot of these laptops, what we're gonna start to see is the battery life is gonna start shrinking. Now, you can absolutely replace batteries, right, going
I
forward,
just
it's
ordered
cheaper
new
than
batteries
price.
for mine, so.
Yeah, I mean, so you certainly can do that sort of thing. I mean, it just becomes more text on a lot of the texts that are out there. I mean, I will say out loud, we have fewer texts than we've previously had before too, and so it's fewer bodies going that way.
Does the technology become obsolete on the Chromebook, or does it just last until the?
Technology certainly becomes obsolete at some point. Google has done a very nice job of stretching their security though. So it used to just be like, for 5 years, we're going to cover this device. They've now stretched it to 10 years. No Chromebooks will last me 10 years.
Yeah.
I'll certainly tell you that much. I mean, it might have
Because the
2
hardware or
keys
because
left.
of the software?
Both. I mean, the software, the hardware itself, most of the times it's,
Keyboards are trash.
well, and the RAM is about 4 to 8 gigs of RAM, so I mean, just over time, that just becomes overloaded and, really slow.
It's like their cell phones,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
And is there any value to the, like, if you refresh South next year, all the employees, do they go to like, do you get any money back for the one that you took back?
Well, I think those would be the conversations that we would be having with some of the companies that are out there. I mean, we still have some warranty left that would be on some of those devices, so I think that there would be different ways to utilize that.
So it looks to me, Chris, like we're gonna need to find out some of those other answers so we can net out the cost of the value of those items, like you just brought up, Melissa, to see what our net number is here going forward. And what are you looking for from us tonight?
That's a great question. I think more than anything, we need to continue to have some conversations. What I would look to do, because I'm feeling more confident right now saying I think that the 3-year plan is the way to go. I think that, presenting you guys with some of those options that are out there, I guess what I would need to know from this group, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot because I know that we're just bringing it up right now, is to be able to think about, is one-to-one something that's palatable for this district? Because if that's the case, I certainly think that we have a pathway there. And that's what I would need to know at some point.
And are we gonna get any kind of, what are we gonna get from curriculum and from the other folks that use these devices to bolster what you're saying that we need? That we need to have these for testing, that we need to have these for this, we need to have this for that.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, I've shared this thought this message with principals, and every single one of them is like, that totally makes some sense, right? With the teachers that I've been meeting with as well too, every time you bring it up, they're like, that makes some sense, right? Because what teachers see a lot of times is a kid, you know, this still might occur, but hopefully less, like a kid doesn't have a device, then all of a sudden they have to go down, they have to check something out that's out there, or while they're sitting in the classroom, one teacher has 4 different types of devices that are out there. And so the teacher is spending time troubleshooting with the student, because this kid has a MacBook and this kid has Uncle Johnny's, you know, 7-year-old Dell laptop out there, as opposed to, we've got these Chromebooks, it's uniform, we can manage them.
Okay.
Is there any risk to the district with having personal devices on them out there from a security perspective?
To be honest with you, I think that risk is always going to happen that's out there. I mean, we've got a very secured environment. We want all of our students to be on the correct SSID or on the correct Wi-Fi that they need to be. So, and there's tech acceptable use policies that go along with that. Like, if you're using our Wi-Fi and you're a student, I need to know who you are and you're logging in, and so that we're going along with those. You shouldn't be using guests or anything like
But there's not increased risk with using your own device versus a district-owned device.
There is far less risk when you're using school-owned devices.
That's what I would assume,
Yes.
and I think that's an important thing for the district to be aware of, especially if there's studies out there where school districts have been attacked. I work in healthcare, we're getting attacked nonstop.
Yep.
And it's probably safe to think school districts are coming at some point.
Well, we can adjust our environment much better when
But
we're school managed.
Right, and I think that's part of the justification, if this is a pathway that
Sure.
the board or this committee wants to recommend, I think that's a big component of the talking.
Sure.
So-
So thank you for that.
So this is where Melissa was going, I think. One recommendation I would make is if you could put together sort of the number that you'd feel comfortable with, or as comfortable as you can. If this had to get pushed out a year,
Mm-hmm.
right, for the line up with the sinking fund.
Sure.
What would you come to ask for next fiscal year to have enough devices where
Yep.
you feel comfortable if teacher X, Y, and Z, something happens, you can get
Yeah,
them,
but the
get them a
Band-Aid.
device, the Band-Aid.
Sure.
And I think this is where Melissa was going. I think that would be another helpful analysis to
I
see.
can
Hey,
do
we
that.
can do this, and then maybe we can get the sinking fund, and boom, then now we can roll. Like you might need a year, right? You might need a Band-Aid for a year.
Understood. Yeah.
I think in order to get Chris off the hot seat here, why don't you guys, send me anything that you think we need to have? Okay, shoot me an email, I'll get it to Chris and we'll get it out there. If you can get it to me by the end of the week, then we'll get it to Chris, he'll get it to us by next week, by the end of next week.
Done.
And that way we all have the same answers, and we all got, you know, 'cause a lot of this is just, you have to noodle on this a little bit just to absorb it.
Sure.
The big numbers.
What was the warranty that was purchased on the devices in 2020?
It was a 5-year warranty that we got out there.
Is that full replacement within that 5 years, or?
It's all coverage, yeah.
So then, going back to what Melissa said, I think you have to look at that and say, why am I replacing any of them?
Right away.
Unless they break before 5 years, right?
I'm also cheap, so.
Frugal. Hey, I got that, my laptop's older than yours.
And not that some of them aren't gonna break, but if they break, they're gonna be replaced.
We still have something to replace, yeah.
And understanding, like, yeah, you may wanna start slightly before the 5 years to not just hit a wall, but.
Well, that's why this conversation is so awesome, because you're doing it so far in advance.
Right.
Which can be
Be
planned.
proactive about it.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Well, I appreciate your
Thanks,
time
Chris.
for bringing this.
No, y'all appreciate your time.
I'm not off yet, though.
You're doing excellent, I'm still doing that.
Oh, you're doing it?
Yeah. This one I hope will be quicker. I'm gonna promise you. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Thanks. I bored you to death. Love it.
He's been texting me all through your
It's
presentation.
like, when is this guy gonna be done?
Thanks, man, appreciate it. Take care, buddy.
So the next one, and I don't have any paperwork to share with you, it's because this is just more of like an awareness conversation that's out there. As you all know, in 2020, we built a fiber ring, and it's been going very, very well throughout our district. But because it's a ring and not a wheel, right? So basically the wheel is, we've got our data center in one place and it goes from the data center to Barnes, data center to another building, data center. Because it's a ring, in our community, we lose power quite a bit, right? Whether it's any type of storm that occurs. And I'll give you a perfect example. Over at Grosse Pointe North didn't lose power. They had full power, but Ferry, which is connected to the ring, lost power one time. Barnes, which is connected to the ring, lost power at one time. So that isolated Grosse Pointe North. They had no network whatsoever. So although they have power, everybody's going, I can't function. I can't do any of that. So with E-rate funding, one of the conversations that Garrett, our senior network supervisor, and myself and our E-rate consultant, Bob Rice, have been working on is creating an RFP to go out there to see what we need to do in order to splice some of the current fiber that we have so that we can create better redundancy that can go back into our data center overall. So we're going to be looking to put an RFP out in the next coming days, and it's 2 different RFPs. One of the RFPs is maintenance, it's called, and that goes along with the splicing of the current fiber that we have. And then the other one is purchasing the network equipment in order for that to be lit up appropriately. The cost of that total, I won't be able to share with you until that comes back, but I don't imagine that it's going to be any more than $40,000. That would be with the general fund. It's E-rate, and so we would be getting 50% of that back. Now before you ask, well, come on, last time we had this conversation about E-rates, right? Before we had this conversation about E-rate, define the 50% to me. I reached out to Bob Rice again this morning. I said, Bob, you got to tell me, is it truly the 50%? And he said, yes, you would be eligible for a 50% return. So could be around $40,000, I'm thinking. We would get about 50% of that back. To me, it makes a ton of sense to continue to have that redundancy culture.
Where's the data center at?
It's at Parsons Public School, in the basement. That's it.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thanks, Chris. Hey, Ben, you're up.
All right,
Sorry, Ben.
that's all right. So, I have to ask Chris's forgiveness, and I did this as I was walking out the door, but I did make one color copy here. And, but I wanted to pass this around and show you guys some of the issues that we're having at the auditoriums right now. So, if you could pass that around, and I'll begin my little speech while you guys look at some of the issues. That's just some of the pictures and some of the damage at those locations. But
South of Pierce.
South and Pierce. So it was brought to my attention shortly after I started with the district that there was significant water damage to the South and Pierce auditoriums. After performing our due diligence and later partnering with Erisman Architects, it was confirmed that the source of the damage was tuck pointing. On January 17th, we received bids from 4 companies to oversee the restoration and tuck pointing at those schools. After properly vetting the 2 low bidders, the district is recommending the low bidder, Holcomb Development, at a total bid alternate, plus the alternate of $184,894.68. The district is also requesting 10% contingency for this total request of $203,384.14. Are there any questions?
Who's paying for house? Where's the
Sinking
money
fund.
coming from? Sinking fund?
Yes.
When are you looking for an approval
I would like this to send this to the next board meeting.
for action at February 6th or for
Just
review and then
review and-
action the next
review and then action.
Okay.
Tuck pointing's like rust on a car, though.
Right.
You start digging and you find more.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
and if you pull anything out of this, from my perspective and my seat, tuck pointing is climbing the charts as one of the, from the building and grounds perspective, is climbing the charts is one of the biggest needs in the district. We are just dying at the vine as far as tuck pointing goes, and that's why I'm asking for the alternate to kind of take care of some of these other issues.
Well, tuck pointing, I think, Chris, we go back in time, we used to have that as a line item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Line item in the, out of the general fund.
So, and also I consider if these areas don't get addressed, they are considered safety issues. With the pillars at South those can crumble in, and then the acoustic wall tiles can fall in on people if this goes unaddressed. But my request is to go to the next board meeting and present this.
Does anybody have an objection to that? Okay.
Alright. The next one is just like Chris, this is just information, but to update you on a new code that came out with the state of Michigan. There's
a sheet on that.
Yes. There's a new code update with the state of Michigan, and there are a number of our elevators in the district that fall under that category that need this new door lock monitor installed, that we have to have done by 2028. You can see the cost of what it would cost in '24 if we address this in '24 at each of these locations. If we deferred it, it would move up to $25,000. If we deferred it again, obviously it would go up to $28,000. But Brandy and I are gonna work through how we're going to roll this out, and we'll be back. But I just wanted to make everybody aware of this new code that the state of Michigan is requiring.
So, what's the date, and we have to have it completed by 2028?
January 2028.
And so the 3 columns that you've given us here are just based on what year, that's a fiscal year, right?
Correct.
What fiscal year it gets dropped into. Okay. There's no way around it, right?
No, there's no way around it.
So it's a given, it's just a matter of when we want to bite the bullet.
When we do it, yeah.
Okay.
So. But
Do you need anything from us now on this?
nothing, no, I just want to make you all aware of the new code update that's coming. It came out last quarter in 2023, so.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that one?
Is this specific to school districts, or it's any elevator in the state?
Any elevator in the state of Michigan. Well, let me take that back. So it doesn't go over like VPLs, it's certain elevators. So vertical lift platforms, they're not covered under this, it's specific elevators that are in our district.
So the one that we talked about
Correct.
for Parcells is not?
No. No.
This doesn't,
It's not,
Not
it's
affected by
not
it.
covered under this code.
and, okay. And is there only one technological option that
Correct.
is offered to do this?
Yeah, a lot of, on our listservs and our town halls for the other districts, we're all going through this right now. So it's not germane just to us, it's, like I said, it's through the state of Michigan.
Is there any kind of consortium pricing on this per unit, or is something you have to go out for individual bids per?
It's probably gonna have to go out for bid for different, companies, Otis, TK.
Got it. So it's not just one vendor?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
got it.
Does the state, if you know, does the state typically, the state, in terms of education dollars or grants available to school districts, when the state building codes do something that affects school district, do they generally offer grants for this type of stuff?
Sometimes, like right now, another one that you guys will be made aware of, we have a Clean Drinking Water Act that's going through the state, that the state is providing grant money for, that will require every drinking fountain or water faucet that provides food is gonna be filtered throughout the district. So that's another thing that's changing here, that's gonna be another requirement, but there is grant money. But for this specific one, there is no grant money.
So not every elevator at these schools is on this
Correct,
list.
correct.
All right.
These are just the specific elevators that are affected in the district.
Okay. Is there something technologically specific about these elevators where if we made it so they did not have that feature, we would not have to update it?
No, we're gonna have to update these regardless.
All right.
Okay, more good news. Okay. We're into your bailiwick now, Brandy. Monthly reports, development update.
All right, hi everybody. I didn't have an opportunity to introduce myself, so I'm Brandy Pavlick. I'm your Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the school district. So I'm new to the committee in its entirety. I know that we have worked through seeing some presentations on Michigan benchmark and what we're doing and moving forward with looking at some of those reports. We're focusing a lot on financial reports that we're wanting to see collectively as a group, and then for them to go into the monthly board meetings. Where we are in the process currently with Michigan Benchmark is putting information together, making sure we're working out the kinks, I guess I would say, with respect to making sure all the coding is aligned and our programming that we currently use is able to give us the information. It is just not pretty to look at. It just gets very in-depth and in detail, and we could really go, well, I probably couldn't go crazy, but you guys could go crazy hearing me talk about functions and objects and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to work with Brendan over at Michigan Benchmark to get a report that is going to be easily interpreted and viewable from everybody's standpoint, from the community, for the committee, everybody, if somebody was to take a look at these reports, kind of to see where we're at. Through that process, we do want to talk through, you know, obviously some of what we're going through with respect to budgets and budgets to actuals. We're going to continue to see our monthly finance reports that go to the board. Well, I guess I don't know if I should say continue. Ahmed, maybe you could speak on behalf of this because I'm not aware of if this committee does see the board reports that before they go to the board.
They don't.
They don't. Oh, okay. So the same reports that go to the board currently will continue to go to the board. And then we're going to be working on more of getting a little bit more in-depth and detail on the general fund only. So we'll have two different types of reporting. But we're looking to bring reports to this committee so that we can have an understanding and see, just going through the process and understanding where we are and where we're trending, where we're going, that kind of thing. It's a work in process. So that's my update with respect to that. Didn't know if you wanted me to say anything about our millages and working towards those as well.
I think we'll probably pick that up at another meeting.
Okay.
I appreciate your time though. Anybody have any questions for Brandy? So basically with Brandy, just to summarize, the reporting that we're doing, we're enhancing what we do now. It's a work in progress. You and Chris are working with Michigan Benchmark to come up with reports that are relevant to the board and to the community. Does that pretty much sum it up?
Yes, and I definitely want input as far as from the committee here, if anybody has things that they want to see specifically in some of these reports that they're not seeing or have not seen in the past.
Okay. So I guess we'll take the same tack as we're doing with Paul Wills. If you guys, based on your business experience and the things that you're involved with, if you see things or you can think of things that you'd like to see, you know, on a monthly or quarterly basis that better help us understand where we're headed as a school district, feed those to me and I'll get them to Brandy. And if you can use me as a feed point, and then I'll feed everything to you, Brandy, and you can work on it.
Just to piggyback on what Brandy said about the millages, and we can discuss it next month.
Yeah.
That's a big concern, because we're looking at 10 months basically, and you're going out to vote in November.
Right.
And you've got the homestead millage, the non-homestead millage, the sinking fund millage, and then Wayne County has the enhancement millage. And if we do put an increase in there in the sinking fund, it's a big, major project.
Major sales pitch.
Yep. So, and you have to start really, you come in hot and heavy in the fall, but you gotta have all your ducks lined up before that, obviously.
Yeah, and the only reason I brought that up is because if we want to take it to an August primary, instead of going to November, that's 6 months. We have 6 months to get moving and pushing these out.
What do you recommend, Chris?
Well, in part, quite frankly, it's a political decision. You legally can go, there's, 4 different dates, Brandy, you can use? 3 different dates?
Yeah, so right now our only options are August, November, and next May.
Right.
Next May would be the last shot, so if we missed, having voters, pass the vote on August or November, we could go back in May. But after May, it's gone, like, we will not have it for 2025.
And I don't know what other cities have projected for the November ballot in terms of tax issues or whatever. Not all of them necessarily.
So Chris, who do we look for as a school system to put together a cohesive picture of each of these items?
Well,
Is that something we do internally?
Brandy and also our legal, Miller Canfield.
Miller Canfield would put that together,
Yes.
PFM do that?
Both.
Okay. So is that something before you retire that you can at least get a motion?
I know Brandy's already working on that, and she's been in contact with PFM, which is the financial advisors, but then we've gotta get the deadlines, and then you have to get language, and you have to get the language approved by the board, so there's a lot of steps that have to take place between now, and there's drop dead dates in there all the way up to the time of voting.
Well, I'm just speaking for myself, Brandy. It sounds to me like if May is your backup date, that we have to bring it either in August or November. Because you don't wanna be in a situation where you're bringing it in May.
Exactly,
On a-
right, yes, yep.
So,
Yeah, and I have a timeline put together, and from the Miller Canfield, and I do have some resolutions, we just have to make some, decisions on when we're gonna start put out and advertising and what we need to do to campaign.
And typically what's done in the past, like with the bond, you have a election committee that
right.
gets the word out and raises money and all sorts.
So who's gonna put together the list of what items we would be using that sinking fund for? Is that something we're doing internally?
Randy and Ben and Chris are doing that now, looking at all the various options, 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil. I assume we're gonna do a 5-year renewal, but that's an assumption, so.
What are the options that are normally 5 years?
Well, you can go up to 20 years, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But, not many districts do that. Some have gone 10.
Yeah.
And, at one time, we only did 3, and then we boosted it to 5, and that was a sales pitch we had to make as well. But 5 has been what we're doing. It'd be nice to, get one of those off cycle and maybe make it 10 years, but that's a political decision.
So 3 of them are technically renewals, and 1 would be a renewal at 1 mil.
And then an increase on the other, yes.
Okay, so I guess it sounds to me like we need to have your master list. Let's see.
Quickly.
Yeah, rapidly, I was gonna say. You got the list,
Yeah, it
Chris
is.
has his done already. He wants his one-to-one computers. So, so that's something we're gonna see next month, or do we need to schedule sooner?
Can you have something done by next month, Brandy? Yeah, she nodded her head.
Yeah, so I think that we're gonna have some conversations going around in the office.
Yeah.
Really, if we're pushing for August, we would probably need some type of something this month from the board. But, we're just really gonna have to plan for that, and I just wanted this group to be aware of that, because that is a big chunk of our financing, and, not talking just thinking, we're talking operating too. That's a huge hit if we, don't do this. So, any support that we get from the community to, get all of this, pushed, taxes are already high in Grosse. So it's not, everybody knows that, it's not something new, so.
The other thing that's hard about a August date is that you rely on parents and your constituents, and summer, people aren't around, so that's a tough thing to do. It can be done, it's been done in the past in other districts, but.
Is PFM somebody that would give us advice on that, Chris?
They can, and so, yeah, Miller Canfield will just do the technical stuff, but PFM will do that.
As far as the logistics and which is a better way to go?
Yeah, they can do that.
So I guess PFM is the one we're looking for input from, Brandy. Sounds like as far as, you know, timing wise on this whole thing.
So Miller Canfield has actually given us our timeline on that, like as far as what we need to do, timeline
From a
wise
legal
on that to move
From
along.
from a legal perspective.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, from a legal perspective, I'm more
Yeah.
thinking about from a marketing perspective, how this unrolls.
In the past, what boards have done, our boards and other boards, but, for lack of a better word, they've had a work session where they
Right.
discuss all the issues and not necessarily come to agreement, but kind of forge a plan of what's moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's something we have to talk to Sean about and get scheduled sooner rather than later.
Right.
So Ben's gonna have the list by next week. What's realistic, Ben, as far as when you can have that list?
Maybe month and a half.
Wow, okay. Okay.
I mean, just so I'm clear, we're talking about a list of things that are needed for next year, or are we talking going
Talking about a
forward?
list of things we'd be paying for with a sinking fund
For 5 years.
for 5 years.
Over the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Then I've got more to
Yeah.
add. There's a whole slew of
So, I mean,
technology.
if we gotta work backwards, we've got a whole presentation that needs to go out to the public. And we've got a November, let's say we're looking at a November date, then got a lot of cranking to do very quickly. So, okay, we'll see that next week from Ben, I'll put that in the minutes. Okay, do we have any other new business? Anyone? Okay, public comments? Do we have any public comments, folks?
No, thank you.
Okay. Committee member comments, anything